Hello, everybody. This is Angel Ribo with Expansion Network. Welcome, everybody, to Expansion Network. As you know, every single day accelerating the consciousness of humanity. And this is Angel Ribo broadcasting worldwide from Dallas, Texas. As you know, I'm known here in the US as the CEO confidant. I'm known in Latin America as the co-founder and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation. And here we start a series of conversations with someone amazing, extremely special. She likes, like the same as us, she likes to go all over the world. And right now, although she typically stays long periods of time or calls herself home Florida, she's actually right now in Europe. So I would like to welcome to Expansion Network Daisy Papp. Hi, Daisy, how are you?
Hello, my dear Angel. I'm so glad and I truly appreciate your time and your invitation to do this series to support humans. And thank you. I'm doing very fine. How are you?
Good. Thank you. So tell me, how is Europe? What time is it? We're in the place where you are right now.
It is 6:45 p.m. local time, but in my home in the Florida Keys, it would be 12:45 p.m. So I'm a little bit, all over the time zones, but I'm used to that. And yes, it was correct when you said that usually that's my home. My residence, my all-time residence, full-time residency is in Florida. And I came to Europe because there are many open ears, and I'm supporting all those who have an open mind, open ears, and a good heart.
So let's start. I'm sure that throughout the conversation, our audience will get to know Daisy better and what she does. But I would like to start really with a very simple conversation. How did you find, with a very simple question, how did you find Europe? What's changed in Europe for the last months or years?
Well, over the last month, I don't know what changed because I arrived here in June and I don't really see much changes since June. What I see, though, since I've been here last, there's a tremendous change. I see much fear. I see much fear-mongering. I see businesses have changed. I see families have hard times making a living. I see that many people are disconnected from one another. The separation between humans is tremendously visible and emotionally also feelable. I know that word doesn't exist, but I think it expresses what I mean. It is saddening. Nevertheless, what I'm noticing more and more is that people are very awake and very alert to what media says and what media does, and that these two things are not aligning. And I can see many minds opening up to find alternatives, alternative sources, alternative resources, alternative groups, and alternative communities where they can be who they are and where they can connect with humans who are like-minded, like-hearted, and most likely also have similar visions for our future.
Before June 2022, when was the last time that you actually were physically in Europe?
2019.
2019. Okay, so it's been
very beginning.
So it's been three very intense years between the first time or the time before the last that you went and this last time. So so that's the difference that you've seen. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I'm observing. I like to be an observer. I have 2 ears and I have 2 eyes, and I like to observe verbally, acoustically, and I like to observe visually. And I speak to people from all walks of life. I speak to people at the doctor's office. I speak to people where I'm holding a lecture. I speak to people who I'm supporting, and I speak to people from many countries here in Europe. And what is very similar, it amazes me that the like-mindedness across the borders becomes more and more obvious and visible. Why that is, I do believe that people realize that some things don't add up. Information that was given from the media and from politicians and from, I'd say, official authorities they can no longer be true because so many controversies become visible, and people are upset at times, which I totally understand, because as humans, yes, we have the right to be upset as well. What we do with that upsetness, that's a different story.
So, obviously, those 3 years you lived in the U.S. and obviously this, let's say, this worldwide, situation, circumstances, conditions that we have lived. You lived them mainly in the U.S., but now you are in Europe after they've spent those 2 years and a half. So, how would you compare that to the U.S.? Obviously, you live in Florida. Obviously, I would say that for the audience, obviously for the U.S. audience, there's going to be no surprise from what I'm going to say, but really I would say that every single state in the union here in the U.S. is very different to one another. But how would you say that you see a difference between what you lived in Florida for those last 3 years and what you have lived in Europe recently?
So I'm very, very blessed, and I'm very grateful to live in Florida. It is my chosen home since 14 years, actually to the date as of tomorrow. And I do believe that it had a big impact on people to be locked up, to be locked down, to be separated, to have no permission to leave the house. There were regions where people were not allowed to leave the house for 2 months, except to the doctors or buying necessities at the grocery store. That leaves a mark, and especially on the children. I see many children who would be in the age of starting to speak, and they don't. Why? Because speech is not only acoustically delivered and learned, but also through the many facial expressions, the mimics and the muscles, the facial. For example, when a father tries to teach their child or a mother tries to teach their child to say mama, then they don't say mama, they say mama, mother, mommy, daddy. So they do it very expressively, and children learn through the mirror neurons very much by them seeing how you do it. And because of the cover-ups of the faces, much of the face was not visible. So children now have tremendous difficulty learning to speak. This is just one of the many side effects.
And have you seen any difference between what has happened in the US and what has happened in Europe?
Yes. So what I see in Florida, I was very free. I mean, I did not wear any face coverings. I call it muzzle, and I don't respond well when someone is trying to shut me down or shut me up. And a muzzle to me is somewhat a metaphor, as if it would do that. So I don't respond very well to this. I was sitting on a plane from A to B here within Europe, and they asked me, where's my mask? And I said, so wait a minute. When I come back from your country to where I came, then I don't need a mask. But when I'm flying out, so you're telling me there are ailments that know directions, and they know exactly in which direction to travel, but the other way they don't. The lady left me alone very quickly because she understood that it would be a lengthy discussion to have, very respectful, but lengthy. So I see that in Florida, I've seen many people who still covered up, and I know people who were using all sorts of disinfectants that also include many toxins. So I say, I can only speak for me. I choose not to use them. I love water and I love soap, and I use that all my life, and that is the way how it will remain as long as I'm on this planet. And I know that in Florida, I've not seen so many traumatized humans, especially the youth and children, than here. And here, students, people who had businesses, people who had restaurants, people who had business in the service industry, like hairdressers or massages or cosmetic studios. it left a big, deep mark in people here, and they're very afraid of what's coming. So people are starting to prepare very smartly, because this time around there are many attorneys and many legal advisors that are very well prepared what is doable and what's not here in Europe. And I hope to make it back home before any craziness may start on this end.
When Daisy and I were talking before the show, we decided to call it "It's Time" and "It's Time Too," and every one of our shows is going to have a different title. But and I think now it's time for, now that you have started to talk and to share your thoughts and your experience, I think it's very relevant for everybody to know what's going on in the world, in the different, parts of the world, because we know that what we might get from normal, let's say, sources of information is not necessarily accurate. So now I think it's time for the audience to know who Daisy is. So you are right now in Budapest, which is the capital city of Hungary in Europe. Why are you in Hungary? What's the relationship between Hungary and Daisy? Because while reading the copy that accompanies this show, it says that you were born in Germany, right? So why are you in Hungary, Daisy?
Yes, I can understand that might bring some confusion. So I was born and raised in Germany, and my mother was German, and my father was Hungarian. And my mother and my father, they met at Lake Constance, and I'm the fruit of their love. And of course, my father, after he passed very early on, I was 8 years old when he passed. My ties to Hungary still were alive very much within me. Also, my grandparents died at the moment when my father died due to a car accident. And after school, my mother wanted to send me to England to learn English. And I said, Mama, no, I already know English. And I don't really like the weather conditions there and the rainy and London time and so forth. I please want to go to Hungary and study there. And it took me a while, and she was soft-hearted enough, and she could see my point, and she allowed me to study here in Hungary. So I have still ties, no family, but I have chosen family here. And that is what brings me to Hungary at times.
Okay, so you keep on having really strong ties to Europe, although you live in Florida.
Yes.
And
yes.
What do you do? What do you do for a living? Because people that might have already Googled her name might know your name. They might know that you have a few books that you have already published. Could you share with the audience what books, what they are about, and what do you do for a living?
Well, what I do for a living is hard to express, because to me, I never consider it. I do it for a living. For me, it's a passion. I cannot stop doing what I'm doing because I'm so tremendously passionate about it. I love humans. I love humans, and I love their creativity, and I love to support them so they can be at their best. And that brought me to study many modalities that helped me get over my own traumatic life experiences that were very much, I'd say, changed my life when they happened. So I ended up being an orphan when I was 17. And when I then had my own little family, I had a little son and I had a husband, I was not really well, and my body gave up on me, and I was skin and bones. Nobody would find out what's wrong with me, because at that time it was not so common to speak about psychosomatic, or to speak about that maybe emotional pain causes physical ailment. And that route of self-finding and self-healing, my inner world, not the physical body, but the inner world, that brought me so much joy. And I thought, wow, something's happening that I could never imagine. I thought I would live the rest of my life grieving, being depressed, not liking food, raising my child in survival mode. That's what I thought. And then when I realized, oh, so I can feel better, and there are solutions, and I can heal these big wounds within me, I wanted to share with the world. I wanted everyone to experience that joy and that wow, that lightness, and that it's possible at all. And that led me to study many modalities from many leaders in this industry. And I never gave up. I'm still studying new things and to create new recipes, because it is time. It's time that we become Homo humanus. That's the new species, I believe, from Homo sapiens getting to Homo humanus, meaning the humane human. And I'm like an information vacuum. I like to consider myself. So wherever there's something of my interest, and then I mix it up and create something. And then I give lectures and I do seminars. I do one-on-one sessions with clients from around the world. I do a podcast since 2 years. It will be the second birthday this year, and we have listeners in 73 countries in the meantime, and we never advertise because we don't have the budget for it. So it's word of mouth. So what I do for a living, it gives life to me when I see that humans find a way out by finding their way in, because the only way out, I believe, is inward. And I support humans to do that from all walks of lives and from all geographics and cultural backgrounds. And that's my passion.
What are the books that you have published so far, Daisy?
Yes, thank you for reminding me, because I forgot to mention the books. Well, so I wrote a book which is quite a big piece of literature. It is called The Formula for Finding True Love, 5+2. It is not solely meant to be a formula for finding romance, because romance is romance. But what is love? When I ask 100 people what is their definition of love, I receive more than 100 answers, because people most of the time have more than one idea what it could be. And I thought that let's bring it together and let's create an unromantic formula for something that might bring a romantic outcome, and that is the 5+2. There is a lot of self-inventory tools included. It shows where love comes from and how it can be generated and how it can be nourished so it can flourish. And there are many, in the appendix, there's many self tools on it that we can experiment with ourselves. So I believe in order to become more lovable and to become more loving, it is most important that we know ourselves. And that's what that book is about. Then there's another book, The Island Model. I wrote that after Hurricane Irma in 2017 that destroyed my home completely in Florida. So I lost almost everything physical, but I realized that I didn't lose what's in my mind, between my ears and what's in my heart. And I started doing workshops there for survivors. And that was welcomed and embraced so lovingly and so lovely that one of the ladies, one of the attendees, she said, Daisy, you must write that as a book. And I said, okay, I will. So I did. And then you, Angel, because I like to call him on his Spanish sound, Angel, what you then inspired me to do was, Daisy, the island model, you must rewrite this for the current situation. People need that. So I took your words to heart and I sat down, glued to my chair, and I rewrote the book. And it is the island model, Homo sapiens isolatus. So the isolated human, and that we are not meant to be isolated, and we are not meant to be treated like filled with ailment. I do believe that I don't need to prove that I'm healthy. I do believe I need to find out when I'm ill. And I think everyone should consider this as an invitation to think about that. There is another book that was published. It's a software update for your mind, which includes just really good tips and tricks that people can use instantaneously.
Exactly. And you mentioned that today we will talk about inverse, INVERSE. What is inverse, Daisy?
Oh, my goodness. You put me on the spot because you experience inverse. And you said this is good. You would like to speak about that more openly and in public. Well, inverse, as the name itself already somewhat includes means that we're inverting something. So I give an example. When we have a sock and you take it out of the dryer, sometimes it's the other way around. So you put your hand in it and then you pull it out so that you can pull it on the right way. So that is sort of something that inverse can do. For example, when we think of everything being energy, I'm not a scientist, but I like to study much of their work. And I'm very interested in their expressions. And I'm very interested in what they speak about energy, that energy is, and it can only be steered or it can be transformed. Now, when we have a look how many energies are expressing themselves through us, that may or may not even be our own, then I think it is a good idea to, because we cannot stop them, right? Energy cannot be stopped, but it can be steered or transformed. I think it is a very good idea to start transforming specific energies that no longer support us in our walk of life, in our vision, in our dreams, in our everyday life, and in becoming more humane, human, homo humanus.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more with you. Actually, Daisy was kind enough to share with me what the inverse, strategy is and what it means for a human being. And I would also encourage people to go. I think that you have an app as well, right?
Yes,
so,
yes,
so
yes.
people can actually download, and they will understand better what that is, what it means, and also there's also a small booklet that talks about the inverse. I don't know if you call it the inverse method or the inverse approach, but I would really encourage everybody to, because as you know, we are all day long surrounded by different sources of information and possibilities. But I have to say that it was impressive to live in my own body what the inverse strategy or method is. So what's the best way for everybody to download the app or to even find the booklet?
Okay, so the booklet is very easy to find. You go to daisypapp.com, and then in the top bar in the menu on the very right side, there's one menu point that is inverse, and you click on that, and there you can download the mini ebook in English or in German. So both are already uploaded, more languages to come. The translation to Hungarian is already ready because it's to my heart, close to my heart, my father's home country, and I like to support them as well. And then Spanish will be the next, and then we will continue with more countries to serve them as well. The app can be found easiest on either the App Store or on Google Play, and the best way to find it is when you type in inverse self-recoding, because there are many different apps that are called inverse, but they do something very different. So inverse self-recoding, we can put it in the link underneath and under this show, and then we can share that. And of course, the app also works as a web application on the website, so you can calculate. I'd like to give a little example, so something that maybe everyone can relate to. Let's say human A shouts at human B, and they yell. So this one yells, "You are just stupid." And now what if human B yells back? You and I, and probably the visitors and the viewers of the show, know that then it's easy to tangle up and to tangle in and to come closer to an explosion. It is not peace bringing. So the human who's shouting, now let's just think for a moment, where does shouting come from? Does it really come from that human, or did shouting itself exist already before this human A existed? And I do believe shouting existed long before human A was born. So when I, as human B, send it back to you, you know what? You are stupid too. They cannot do anything with it. Why? Because they are the shouter. They want to get it out. Now, I'm as a receiver or the responder to that energy, what I can do, I can just simply, I send the shouting in a cleansed form through you back to its origin, because that's where it comes from and that's where it's returning to. Why? Because when I cleanse it and send it back through them, because it's not theirs, they don't own it. Shouting is not only theirs, because I've seen globally, I've traveled many places and I heard people shouting and not shouting as well. So it's a global thing. And it is easy then to inverse that. So what do? We take the word shouting and we put it in the app. And what it does, it calculates the inverse hertz frequency of shouting. And then we can work with that. And there are many beautiful, beautiful ways how we can handle it. There is also on Telegram, we just created a group for Inverse US. That's for the English speaking population around the globe, where we want to create an exchange. So when somebody has questions, I will be there as a moderator, and I will be also helping when there are questions where people can exchange their experiences. So it will be a self-growing group where people who are inversing or using the inverse method, that then they can exchange. And I do believe that it is beautiful to offer a platform where people can connect and help one another out when they are having a common denominator. And if that is the inverse, let that be the starting point.
I have to also add to what you just explained. I have to add that you also have a series of meditations available, which is, I think, really remarkable. As you probably have already realized, Daisy is not a conventional human being. So she's really a disruptor and she's powerful. And what she does very often is put you in a very uncomfortable zone. And I have to say that when I started to listen one of her meditations, that meditation, just the first few seconds, put me immediately in a very uncomfortable zone. And I have to say, I have been listening to meditations literally for 15 years now. And I had never been in that position in which I felt uncomfortable during a meditation. And, you are taught that meditation, you have to surrender, you have to embrace, you have to blah, blah, blah. But I learned that sometimes embracing and going inward, as you described before, it means that sometimes there must be, or there could be some things that bother you. And this is part of the suffering that sometimes growing means. So I would like also you to share with the audience what those recordings mean to you.
Well, the reason why you described that it was a different experience than when you do meditation, I call them empowering audio programs, because they are not really meditations. They can be considered as such, but they can also be considered as something very different. And what it does, it actually brings you back to the origin, because what happens today in your life, in my life, in anyone up there life, is the subtotal of everything they've experienced so far. Now, when we don't clean up and don't clean out what's in there, then things will continue working through us. It's like the energies. Now, I like to go to the root of the cause, and I like to go, when I'm at the root, I like to make changes there so that the symptom itself just subsides automatically. It's just naturally, easily just going away. Why? Because the root cannot uphold it anymore, doesn't feed it anymore. So when I'm just going on the surface, and let's say I want to clean a house and I'm just dusting a little bit, like these cute little French maids in the cartoon, then how is the house being deep cleaned? I mean, there are curtains, and then there are edges, and there's a floor, and then there may be carpets. And so I like to be a deep cleaner. I like to know what's in there. And even if it's impossible to find out what's in there, it's possible to change it. Why? Because your subconscious mind is so smart. It's like a storage of information. Everything that you've experienced so far, even intrauterine, meaning in the womb, is recorded, is in your subconscious mind. Now, it is gigantic. Is it possible to find everything that is embedded there or encoded there? No, most likely not. Is it necessary? No, definitely not, because things can be changed just by sensation. So in these empowering audio programs, what I do in the beginning, I ask you go back to a moment in time where you notice this issue or the challenge for the first time in your life. And that is what's very different from the usual or traditional meditation. That's why I don't call it as such. And then when you're there, that is when we then use the time in a very, very deep alpha state, that you do the work, because I cannot do it for you, but I can hold your hand, or I can whisper in your ears while you do it and guide you through it. And afterwards, usually humans who tested it in the beta version, because before I publish anything, I do my self-experiment, then comes my close friends and acquaintances, and then the next is that I offer it to clients if they want to participate, and then we have some test groups, and then we exchange the experiences before anything is published. And they're very, very dear to me. And we have one for weight release, and because I don't believe in weight loss. Why? Because nobody wants to lose anything. I know when I lose my key, I search for it until I find it. And I think it is maybe not a good idea to call it weight loss. That's why I call it weight release. But we also have one for weight gain, because there are many humans who would like to gain. We also have a muscle gain. That's for those who want to pump up the volume. And we have a well-being, which is very, very gentle. That is very, very sweet. It works really also for the elderly to have a much, much better well-being overall. And we have a few more. I don't even know. I produce so many of them. And you probably know them. You probably have it
a little bit. Before we go, Daisy, I would like you to definitely tell the audience, share with the audience, what's the easiest way to connect with you? You mentioned before that they can go to your website that you mentioned, daisypapp.com, which is DAIS as in Samuel, Y, P as in Paul, A, P as in Paul, P as in Paul.com. Besides that, where else can people find you?
Well, I definitely like to invite people to go and look at Bald and Blonde podcast. You can find the podcast Bald like no hair, because my podcast partner from Australia, she has alopecia and therefore is bald, and I'm the blonde, obviously. And you can find that podcast everywhere on all platforms where you can consume usually podcasts. And you can also go to baldandblonde.live, and you can see many things that we do, and it's all for free because we love humans and we want to support them. But if you want to support us, we are in big, big need as well to continue to do the work we are doing, to remain ad-free, and also the programs that I'm building and doing. So whoever feels like resonating with what we're doing, and it's time. It's time. I think we are at a very, very important edge of time where I think it's like a Y. We either go down or we renew ourselves and come out of this global crisis like Phoenix from the ashes without being burned down totally, but to really come back into the heart. Let's dare to feel again. It's not that scary. And it's possible to learn and acquire how to handle feelings and emotions in a healthy way. And let's communicate. And that's very, very dear to me. So you can find me almost everywhere.
Excellent. Wonderful. So thank you very much for being with us today. As I said before, we're starting a series of conversations with Daisy every time that we meet with her. It's going to be a different conversation, but we wanted to start today with getting to know her, who the woman is, what she does, what is out there that you guys can relate to, that you can do a search on. And when do you anticipate you will be back in the US, Daisy?
I think within a good month I will be back, and I will be very busy with all sorts of lectures, and seminars are starting to roll in. And when some humans feel like they are organizers, please contact me, because I'm more than happy to serve your audience wherever you are, either online or when it's back in the US. I travel within the US frequently as well.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much for being with us today, Daisy.
Thank you so much for your kindness and your kind-heartedness, and for your very sweet invitation. Thank you, everyone who listened. And I thank every open heart and every open ears.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody. I'm sure that you have enjoyed our conversation with Daisy. Papp today as much as we have. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with Expansion Network, as you know, accelerating the consciousness of humanity every single day. We wish you a great rest of Sunday, wherever you are in the planet right now, or if you see that afterwards. So I'm sure that you will have enjoyed it. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the weekend, and see you soon. We love you guys. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.